بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
This fatwa, this information is again from Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, and this is what I understand to be his commentary on, and perhaps it could be a commentary on what we find happening often, is the quote-unquote logical approach to responding to doubts and confusion regarding the Deen of Islam. It seems that a lot of du'at are taking this rational approach and trying to use reasoning and rationalization in order to explain elements of Islam, to justify elements of Islam, and in my humble opinion, it's a faulty approach, and it gives the impression that everything in Islam is reduced to rationalization and to reasoning, when in fact, as a part of the understanding of the Deen, is that there are things which are tawqifi, and there are things which are that do have a i'lal behind them, legal reasoning behind them. But we can't know all of the, not every hukm in Islam has a perceivable or determinable legal reasoning behind it, or a ratio legis, if you will. Some things we just take on the basis that we accept that it's mutawatir, or we accept that it's authentic, the command or the prohibition, we just submit to it. I mean, it's tawqifi. It means that it has no discernible or expressed reasoning behind it, and we simply submit to the commands and prohibitions of Allah. So I think it's a false impression that people are getting, that whatever it is in Islam, you have to look for some rationalization in order to explain it to a non-Muslim or to a fellow Muslim. And subhanAllah, if some of the reasoning is not even consistent with the existing reasoning that's given by the authoritative ulama on these ahkam. I mean, some of them clearly do. And again, I don't know, maybe you cover in the courses that you offer in Usul al-Fiqh, but there could be the illah for a hukam. It could specifically be stated within the ayat of the Quran or in the hadith itself, or the illah can be something that the fuqaha have exercised their ijtihad in determining the potential i'lal, because there can be even more than one illah for a hukam. But then sometimes it comes down to it just being tawqifi, in the sense that there's no discernible legal reasoning for it, and we just accept it. But we find that these speakers in some of the du'at, they're not even referring to the illah that are mentioned by the ulama. They're just coming up with their own rationalization for it. And I think that kind of gets into dangerous territory. If we understand that when the illah is lifted, then the hukm is lifted. And so if people are just making up illah on their own, I think you can get into the danger of thinking that, well, this person's ijtihad, who's not even a faqih or a mujtahid, he's providing a rationalization, and then it stands to reason then that if that rationalization doesn't exist in the circumstances, then the hukm is lifted. Astaghfirullah, that's not how people shouldn't be dabbling in fiqh this way. So Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he exposed the synergy between atheists and rhetoricians. And rhetoricians, I loosely interpreted the term mutakallimin as rhetoricians, people who engage in philosophical rhetoric and rationalization in general, relying on the logic, relying on the philosophical realities in order to uncover the reasonings behind legal reasonings and the reasons behind revelation and things like this. So for the purposes of this, I refer to the mutakallimin as rhetoricians. That among them are those who consider the philosopher superior to the Prophet ﷺ, and the reality of their view, as they quote-unquote state, is that the prophets lied when they claimed their concern was the welfare of the people, and other types of atheism, clear disbelief, and manifest lies against the Prophet ﷺ, and the prophets in general, may the blessings of Allah and His peace be upon them all. It has been made clear in other places in my works, meaning Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, that these philosophers are more disbelieving than the Jews and Christians after the abrogation and distortion of their religions, even if they put on the act of being Muslim. For truly these philosophers only appeared in Islam during the Abbasid and Umayyad states, when the Greek texts and other similar works were translated into Arabic. Refutations against them have already been dealt with at length elsewhere, and the purpose here is to clarify that these rhetoricians who allege that they are refuting the philosophers, the matter is not as they say. Rather, they open the doorway to atheism for them. And due to this, it is found that the majority of those who get involved with these atheists only become involved from the gateway of those rhetoricians, like Ibn Arabi and Ibn Sab'in and others. When those who refuted these atheists set out to do so, Then the atheist sought the aid and help of these innovating rhetoricians, and those rhetoricians helped the atheist against those who ate Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Thus, the rhetoricians are the atheist army who waged war against Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, just as been found by eyewitness. So it's become also a trend these days for Muslim du'at to get up and share the stage with atheists and philosophers, and they set about debating. Sometimes I don't even understand what they're debating or understand the point of the debate, but they bring up any particular issue in Islam, or they try to prove the existence of Allah, or they have these topics that they try to confront, and then they share the stage with atheists and philosophers who, there really doesn't seem to be a genuine interest on the side of the atheists and philosophers who have the platform to listen or to absorb or to accept anything what the Muslims are saying on the other side. And you just end up with both parties just sharing their positions. And I don't know that there's a large contingency of atheists and philosophers that are even willing to take lessons or any pointers from Muslims, even if they consider themselves philosophers or rhetoricians. So you find that by far the majority of people attending these things and watching them online are Muslims. And I just see that as them being exposed to more rhetoric, more theological rhetoric, more philosophy, and almost celebrating, these kind of Pyrrhic victories, if you will, victories that don't really seem to have any winners, in just the confrontation of atheists and philosophers on a stage, and presenting the quote-unquote Islamic philosopher's perspective on these things. So, when in fact it just seems to me to be another gateway and doorway for atheism and philosophy to enter into the lives and the speech of Muslims. So, I think the principle that from the ulama that I've seen, read and seen speak on this issue of learning philosophy and learning different sciences, learning physics, learning these, that first the Muslims should become well established and founded in the Islamic sciences and with the proper aqidah. Then after they learn what is obligatory for them to know from the Islamic sciences, should they choose to study any particular science aside from that, any secular science, or they want to learn some other topic in order to refute and to deal with the people of deviation or with the disbelievers and mushrikeen, then so be it, but only after you first become well established in the Islamic sciences. And that protects the individual himself, protects him from inclining towards those things that he learns, and it protects the community of Muslims as well who end up being his audience. So, Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.